So the first one I did was a gospel record actually. Um and this was the recording was with a choir that our ensemble that I founded, and when we recorded it, um it brought everything that I did to life. I was writing songs, I was arranging them, I was, teaching the vocals and writing the lyrics and pulling the band together and, arranging the band. So once we went through that process, I learned a whole lot.
So, y'all may know I used to be a church drummer, but I like to think of myself as retired. However, sometimes I step in at church to help out in rehearsal or a service. Today's episode, I have our church musician, the one and only Maurice Carroll. Now, Maurice is someone who has a lot of experience from producing to directing to engineering. And I'm really excited for y'all to hear our conversation as he talks about this, including being a voting member of the Recording Academy known as the Grammys. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here is my conversation with Maurice Carroll. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I have one of the most talented musicians I've ever met on the line right now. Somebody I get to work with, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And that is the one, the only Mr. Maurice Carroll. Maurice, how you doing today?
I appreciate that. I'm doing all right. Yep.
Yeah, I always like to start off and ask everybody how they feeling before we get into, your career and stuff. So how you feeling so far? I know we get ready to get into the holiday season. It's cold, the weather changing, but how you feeling mentally?
Look, man. Everybody, like everybody, I got my ups and downs, but I'm maintaining. I'll put it that way. I'm maintaining. Like life happens a lot, and I'm just learning, how to balance it. Really, honestly,
Right.
Like, just I'm not going to be one of those guys that everything is super dope all the time. It's not. It's not really that, and I'm not depressed all the time either. You know what I mean? It's like a nice little balance in the middle there.
No, I definitely understand that. So I wanted to do this interview with you because, we started. You recently came to be the, organist at my church, Christian Memorial Church, and it's been going well. But upon doing research and becoming Facebook friends and following on
Mhm.
Instagram, I'm like, wow, you've done a lot. So I've been excited to sit down and talk to you about your career. And one of the first things I want to know is, when did you fall in love with music?
Honestly, I was 4. And 4 years old. What ended up happening is that my parents and my grandparents, they would stand me at a piano because, of course, I wasn't tall enough to, see over it. But they would stand me at a piano, and then when like music would come on, I could find the key that the song was in, and then around about age 5, 6, I was able to start finding what the melody was just using my ear. And right then and there is where it actually really started. It was like, oh, I'm good at this. I like this, and this is kind of cool and it's kind of fun. And of course, later on through my, years, I learned what it was that I was doing. And come to find out, I was doing a lot more. I had more titles than what I knew that I had. I was just doing stuff, and people were like, oh no, you're a producer. Oh no, you're a music director. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. Okay. You know, I've been in love with it since childhood. Yeah.
So would that be considered having perfect pitch?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, no. I have relative pitch.
Okay.
So what that means, perfect pitch means somebody can say a note and you can hum it, or you can just, you can hear it and say, "Oh no, that's what the note is." That's what perfect pitch is. I have relative pitch. So if you sing something, and you set me, I'm in front of a piano, I'm gonna be round about 3 notes, either give or take, in the ballpark.
Oh, okay. Because I took a keyboarding class in high school. Shout out to Baltimore City College.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I learned was, like, the teacher was telling us about perfect pitch, and I wasn't sure if, like, that still fell into, like, the same ballpark.
Yeah, it's a little different. Yeah. Just
Okay,
playing
so
playing by ear is what I do though.
got you. So when did you first start playing? Like, did you start in church
Yep.
or okay? And how old were
Yep.
you when you started playing?
My first full-time church gig, I was 12.
Okay.
That's when I started getting paid to play and paid to direct. That's when that started. So I've been doing it for a while now.
Eh, well, that's interesting because it's like usually like so I was 12 playing drums and I was like 11. That summer I turned 12 was when I first started playing in church. And growing up, I would see other drummers who were around my age. Very
Mhm,
seldom did I see anybody on keys or organ at that age playing. If they did, they was just playing like secondary keyboard. But
mhm,
you had
mhm.
essentially a lot of responsibility at such a young age.
Yep, I
So
did.
how did no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yep.
how did you balance, especially as a child, right? Now you gotta put singers and other musicians, you gotta like kind of lead them and guide them. How is the
Mhm.
challenges getting them to listen to you and understand like you know what you're talking about?
So it wasn't that difficult actually, because once they knew that I could play and pick out the notes and everything from the songs that they wanted to sing, it was relatively easy for me to say, "No, sopranos, this is your note right here. Tenors, this is your note," and play it. And even though they were older, music is music. There's no, it's no gender, there's no age. It's really just knowing the music, really. So the age factor didn't play a part at all, really. It was just like, do I know what I'm doing? Yes. Are you going to listen? Well, yeah, because you know what you're doing. Okay, cool. Here's your note.
Oh, okay. So did you go in and pursue this further and like were you playing in school as well and or were you just, starting off in church during the middle school, high school years?
Middle school was all church. High school is when I ventured off into R&B, some hip hop. Because at one point I was a rapper during that period. I was a DJ during that period. So that's when I ventured off. But I don't want to say ventured off. I want to say added on. So I
Okay.
was still doing church stuff, but I added the R&B and the hip hop to that. I was let's see. High school is when I really met up with so I went to Poly and then I
Oh,
graduated from
sorry to hear that.
Southwestern. No, everybody can't get in there. I understand. You understand, but it's but you got to have brains to get in there, and then
I
if you
mean,
can't make it
city,
in,
we got I love it.
if you can't make it into Poly, then you go to City. That's what happens.
Wow, it's funny. It's back-to-back episodes because the last episode I had my friend Krishana Davis, who also went to Poly. So yeah, I gotta get some more nights up on here.
See, that's the thing. Poly people are in place to be interviewed.
No,
No, but
mhm,
I did go there, and then I ended up at Southwestern my senior year, and I
okay.
graduated from Southwestern. But while I was at Southwestern, that's where the professional side of my um, musical career really got birthed. I was
Mhm.
in a singing group then, singing the baritone stuff. I was in the group, which you all probably know now as Rough Ends, but we
Yeah.
had a high school singing group, yeah, back then, and we were always in competitions and doing the shows, and I was the guy with the deep voice doing the talking parts and playing keyboard parts and things like that. And while I was there, I had an audition, which I didn't know I was auditioning, but my music teacher said, "Oh, I want you to come and play after school." And I had some my friends, they want to hear you play. And I'm like, okay, cool. I wasn't thinking nothing of it. And what she ended up doing, she tricked me into auditioning to Morgan. And so the
Mhm.
friends that she said they were Morgan State faculty. So she's like, just play, just follow me. Whatever I do, you do. If I change keys, follow me. If I change tempos, follow me. If I do both, follow me. I said, okay. So I sat down and I played, and she was all over the place, and I just kept following. And whatever melody she was coming up with, I was following. And then about 2 weeks later, she said, "Congratulations." I was like, "For what?" She was like, "You got a full scholarship to Morgan." I was like, "How that happen?" She remember my friends? Yeah. She's like, that's what they were here for. That's what you were playing for. So I ended up with a full scholarship to Morgan for music. Didn't keep it because it was very strict. And
Mhm.
when I got to Morgan, it was one of those things where, um, rest in peace to Dr. Carter, Nathan Carter. That's who I was
Mhm.
under. And I was living on my own, had my own car, and going to school at the same time. And it got to the point where he said, it's time for you to start going on tour with the choir. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But the catch was he wanted me more full time in music. And I was like, okay, I can do that. But when it was time to start traveling, I was going to be away too long. And I was like, well, I have an apartment and a vehicle. I can't do that. So he said, basically, pick one. Either you're going to take the apartment and the car, or you're going to take this music. And I was stuck. So I chose my apartment and my car because I didn't want to be homeless. So
Mhm.
that was the end of my scholarship. So that's,
Now,
that's, af- yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I'm so glad you told this story because you hear a lot of times. All right, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I've worked in like warehouses, right? And I've heard stories
Hmm.
like this, but unfortunately, people never bounce back. And we're doing this
Mm-hmm.
interview, and if y'all watching on your Spotify app or if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that he has a high quality mic and he has music behind him. So clearly, this setback did not hold him back. So
Not at all.
how did you, you know, having to choose essentially yourself or music? How did you bounce back after that?
So I transitioned into telecommunications. I went into the radio department, but I went into the radio department thinking that I was going to learn studio engineering. I just didn't know. I didn't have anybody really advising me until it was too late. And too late, I mean, I was starting to take the radio classes, and I'm like, I want to do studio work. This is not what I want to do. And so then I dropped. I was like, let
Mhm.
me go do this. And I didn't know that I was already doing the work. I didn't know that there were titles to it at the time. All I was doing was directing choirs and singing in groups and, playing some chords and arranging and stuff like that. But I didn't know what I was doing was called being a producer. I didn't know that. I didn't know that the official title was composer. I didn't know any of that. And so a partner and I, we built in that process, we were taking people to other people's studios. And when we were finding out like some of the engineers couldn't do what we were asking them to do, and we knew how to do what we were asking them to do. So the the end of it was the last studio that we paid money for. It was like, hey man, can I do this real quick? Oh damn, yeah, go ahead. We got on the boards and was adjusting the faders and doing all of that to get the sound that we were looking for. And then it was like, man, we can do this on our own. So we started building the studio, and we had the studio for about a decade. And learning curves through all of that. You learn technology differently. You make mistakes on the audio end, you make mistakes on the video and the photography end. And but we maintained, like, we kept learning, we kept growing, our clients kept growing with us. And so that's where I got a lot of my studio experience and audio experience and some of the video experience. That's where all of that came from. And also with all of that, running the business itself was a
Mhm.
challenge because you still have, the entrepreneurship that you have to, maintain while you're learning all of this stuff. So you got to know how, what does the cash flow look like? Are the bills being paid? Do we have emergency fund? How are we getting funding to get the next equipment and the updates, and like all of that kind of stuff happens in the structure of the business while you're learning. Oh, well, what does gain do? Well, how does this microphone work with this preamp? And you had to learn all of that stuff. So, we that's how we learned. That's literally how we learned.
Wow. So, understanding like you learning how to, studio engineer stuff. I know. Let me
Mhm,
step back.
mhm.
Did you feel like there was a little bit of like authenticity taken away when you got behind the keyboard? I mean, behind the computer and started composing music and engineering music as opposed to the actual instrument itself? I've always wanted to ask a musician that question, but it had to be like the right one.
Um, it the it didn't take anything away. It's really knowing what hat you're wearing at what time.
Mhm.
So if I'm on a keyboard, I know I'm in creative and musician mode. So when I'm behind the mixer, it's okay. Now I'm in creative but engineer mode. So it's a different type of creativity.
Mhm.
One doesn't take away from the other for me.
Okay. Yeah, because like so as a I love live music, right? But
Hmm.
then there's sometimes I'm like, oh man, that beat, I like how they created the beat on a synthesizer. And when I took the keyboarding class in high
Hmm.
school, that was when they was using the Korgs. I don't know if they still do, but they was making beats on a computer and stuff. Now, mind you, this
Hmm.
is in 2001, 2002, and
Hmm. Hmm.
it was around the time Jay-Z's Unplugged album came out, which is
Okay.
one of my favorites because it's live music. And so I always wondered, like, how do you like musicians feel when it comes to like doing both?
Yeah, it's complementary, really, and it depends
Mhm.
on what genre you're doing as well. So, like certain genres, they don't mix well. So,
Mm,
for me, all of the genres that I deal in, it didn't hurt at all. Sometimes it really boils down to the song itself, like whether you want to use electronic instruments in it and play with tracks, or do you want to freeform and no electronic anything and play in all acoustic instruments. Like it really depends on what the song calls for. Um, for me, I like playing with tracks with when I'm with a band because it locks
okay.
everybody in, and like it doesn't slide, it doesn't speed up, it doesn't slow down. It locks everybody in the pocket. And so I enjoy it early. I really
Okay.
enjoy it. If I have a drummer that knows how to lock and stay in the pocket, I have a couple of drummers friends that so in my circle, I've been blessed to have some talented musicians around me, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and so some of those drummers, it doesn't matter whether they have a click track or not, they're gonna hold that pocket wherever it lands, they're gonna hold it there. And so it doesn't really make a difference to me. It doesn't take away from the live flow of music, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Now, when did your passion for engineering develop? Because like you started your music passion early, but when did the engineering passion come up?
that came when we built the studio. it
Okay.
it was understanding the sounds that could be created and how to manipulate it. And so I'm one of those guys, like, I like clean. I like clean audio. I like clean electronic music. I like everything clean. There's nothing. I'm not really good at doing boom bap hip hop because it has
Mhm.
to have it's supposed to be dirty, and I don't do that well. So it's just, I enjoy it. I like it, and shouts out to anybody that does know how to do it. It's not my lane. So
Mhm.
engineering wise, like, that's the kind of ear that I have. I like things to be crisp, clean. It has to be right. Um, and for me, right means on. I'm gonna say that for me, it means the clarity of the audio. I'll put it
Mm.
that way. Sometimes the music doesn't call for that, but I like that. I like knowing how an EQ affects a delay. I like that. I like understanding how this compression can on this particular microphone works this way as opposed to that microphone, or how a preamp works with a certain microphone. Like I like those kind of things because your ear gets so acute to hearing what those different sounds are. And when you're listening to a record, you can kind of hear what they could have done or what they did that you admire. Like you can actually hear it in the audio. And for me, that's if the audio isn't clean, then the listener can't hear it the way that you intended.
Hmm.
And that's important to me.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You can support this podcast by going on foryourwear.com. Go to personalities and see Brian H. Waters. There you can get Breaking Through Glass Ceilings t-shirt or a hoodie, as well as a No Ceilings Above Success t-shirt. Go to foryourwear.com. Make sure you also check out some of the other podcasters and professional wrestlers as well. You came up at a time where social media wasn't as prevalent, and how would you say that's helped like increase your presence online? Like, how does it help increase? Like, no, how did social media help you as far as getting your name out there, but also just your skill set? Because that's a skill within itself. Also, seeing other musicians and being able to take from here, take from there. So, how has social media helped you throughout your career?
Um, it hasn't actually, not a
Really?
lot. It
Okay.
not a lot. And because I came up in the era of the strong word of mouth. And
Mhm.
so my my most of my clients, most of my circle, it was built from one person saying, "Oh no, you got to go holler at Reese about this," or "You need to, get Reese to play keys," or "Go let him produce a," like it was always word of mouth. And so when social media became a bigger thing, so when I came up, I left. This is really going to date me. I left Black Planet to be on MySpace. That's
Okay.
how that's how far back I
I
go.
mean, the way things been going on Twitter, people calling for Black Planet to come back because
Really?
yeah.
Okay. So, I really, really enjoyed MySpace, and I
Mhm.
enjoyed MySpace because it was like your own personal website that was interactive, so people could come and listen to your music and, interact with you. And when Facebook came out, originally it's for college, college
Mhm.
kids. Um, and when I jumped on Facebook, it was just like, okay. I mean, I don't get it. And, for me, MySpace was better for musicians because all of your
Absolutely.
music is housed there, your videos were housed there, you know, and now it makes you have to work harder to get that same attention. And so Facebook is cool, but you had to do extra work to make it, the platform wasn't set up specifically for musicians in mind. So
Mhm.
for me, I'm not very social. So
Okay.
I'm very to myself. I stay in the background. So it didn't really help much. It made it easier for other people to say, "Oh, that's the guy." That's really all that it did for me. I didn't do a lot of promo until recently, really, about what I do behind the scenes. It's been, and when I say recently, I mean maybe 2 years before pandemic hit is when I started, "Okay, let me post what I'm doing." Okay. But
Mhm.
so it really it didn't help as much as I thought it would. But that's also my fault because I'm
Okay.
not utilizing it the way that I'm supposed to. So it's
Okay.
it's nothing, it's nothing said, to social media in general. It's just that I know that I'm not using it the way that I'm supposed to, and that's one of the areas that I need help in.
Okay. Okay. Now you've gone out of the country. Obviously, you've performed up and down the coast
Mhm.
and around the
Yeah, yeah,
country.
yeah.
But what was it like? And what was the first country you visited? What was it like to perform there? And one of the things I'm always interested in is the
Mhm.
language barrier. Like, what's that? What was that like?
I'm glad you brought that up. The first country that I went to is called Azerbaijan,
Okay.
and it is over by Russia, Turkey, it's over that way. Um, and so that was the first country I went to. We toured about a week and a half there. Language barrier was major because their language is a mix between Russian and Turkish. It's a mix. And so sometimes we had an interpreter, sometimes we didn't. Um, and I just posted about this recently too. Um, there was a time when we were teaching the university students there the music that we were going to perform because we were bringing them into one of the shows. and we
Mhm.
wanted them to play their traditional instruments with our tracks and with the live instrumentation. So the interpreter wasn't there. And the beautiful thing about that is that it allowed both me and my MD, which happened to be my son, it
Nice.
allowed us to teach music. We taught the music without an interpreter with a keyboard and their instruments. So we literally he's clapping out and tapping out what the tempo is and playing the track. And I'm playing the note on the keyboard and giving thumbs up or thumbs down and sign language and the music only to teach the music. So it's like play out the note and they're trying to find it. And I'm like, no, 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 bop, 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 and like clapping out the time. And then like all the language was and then they started, learning it. Um, it's interesting how music translates no matter the language barrier, culture, age. That was a really eye opener for me. I love music, but to actually be in that situation to see how music is the language that we all
Mhm.
know, it blew my mind. It really blew my mind. And just to know, like, to see it happen, like when we did the show, they came out with their instruments and played along, just to see it, to the finish line was
Mhm.
very, very inspiring for me.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard baseball players say that when they go to Japan and you know they know the signs and stuff. But I
Mhm.
always wonder how did that work with music, like like you said, the timing and everything. But I always, just now, what about when it comes to like the songs and the lyrics?
So, sometimes they understand, English, sometimes they don't.
Mhm.
Um, with the lyrics, like when I'm listening to their music, you can still hear what the melody is and where the vibrato is and, how they're saying whatever it is that they're saying and how it relates to the music.
Mhm.
Um, and I've also learned that you don't always have to know what they're saying to understand what the song is about.
Oh,
If it's
okay.
done right, if it's done right and they're emoting the right way, you can get the feeling of the song and kind of interpret it through music just because of how they're singing it and what the music is doing. So it's not really as much of a barrier as you would think it is.
Wow. Okay. Now, what's been like? You have a favorite country you visited?
So far I have two,
Mhm.
Lithuania and Angola so far are
Okay.
my two favorite.
Okay. What about them stood out?
Lithuania was the most Americanized country that I went to. So, they had more English speaking people there. And so it was if even though you could tell we were in a foreign place, it still felt you could feel the American influence on it. So it made it a little bit easier to kind of, get around and, go to different stores and things like that. Angola, I loved because it was full of black people,
Mhm.
and and it just felt like home. It just really, really felt like if it felt like a larger Baltimore. That's what it felt
Wow.
like. It was like it's it was really I don't know. I like the food. I like the
Mhm.
culture. Um, they still weren't fully like there were times we were on the road and the paved road ended and it was just gravel and rock and seeing buildings still being built. So I liked being able to see, okay, this part is finished, but they're still the country is not finished being developed. They're still building it. So it was interesting to see that. But yeah, those are my two favorite. I think I've been to all of the Baltic states.
Mhm.
So that's, Lithuania, Estonia, um, I said Lithuania, Estonia, Belarus. Um, yeah, it's been a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. When did you record your first song and what was the feeling like when the project was done?
Let's see. Okay. So the first one I did was a gospel record actually. Um, and this was the recording was with a choir that our ensemble that I founded, and when we recorded it, um, it brought everything that I did to life. You know, I was writing songs, I was arranging them, I was, teaching the vocals and writing the lyrics and pulling the band together and, arranging the band. So once we went through that process, I learned a whole lot. I learned a whole lot. And getting to the finish line with it was like, oh, that's what that feels like? Alright, and then I learned, "Oh, this is where the work actually starts. Now that we're finished recording, now the work starts," and pushing the album and getting it on radio and getting it in regular rotation, that's where the work is, but the feeling of completion, I liked it because I was able to look back at all of the things that I learned, like what didn't work and how can I make it better next time, So it was phenomenal, man.
You remember the feeling you had the first time you heard yourself on radio?
Yeah, it's the same every time I hear my music on the
Okay.
radio, it's a mouth dropper. It's like somebody likes it. Yes, so but it's always like I've always it always made me feel great and like somebody
Mhm.
likes what I'm doing, and it meant that I'd done the work to get it to that point and that people thought that it deserved to be there.
Yeah.
So all of that hit at it all hits at the same time. And then it all gets like, oh crap, I got to do it again now. Like, so it's like, how do I duplicate it? How do I, all right. So it's it's always something where it's like you feel great and you want to tell everybody like, "Hey, I was on the radio, I'm on the radio, I'm on the radio." And then it's
Mhm.
like, "Ah, crap. Now how do I stay on the radio?"
Yeah.
So it's mixed. It's mixed.
I've had one time I heard myself, and this was, in 2009. Me
Okay.
and my dad, when he was, his group, The Keys of Faith,
Mhm.
they had the new generation, but the original generation came back and did a couple reunions. So I had helped them out, and we would play at I wanna say they took the song. The whole thing is crazy and super unprofessional. The way the music they, because not that it was unprofessional to use it. I should say, all right. So I recorded on my camera. I had, well,
Mhm.
a friend of mine record. I said, "You're gonna record this concert for us," and then I took the audio and ripped it from the camera audio
Okay.
and
Okay.
made it into, it's cringeworthy to think of I did that, but and gave it to put each song on a different track. Next thing you
Mhm.
know, the lead singer of the particular song, he submits it to 1010 1010 AM. That's the quartet station. You know, they have a quartet hour on like Sunday mornings. So one day
Mhm.
we driving and I hear the song. I'm like, wow, they used it. I'm like, wait, that's me and dad on the radio. And granted, of course, if it would up to me, it would have been a drive song, but it was, a slow song where it wasn't much. But that
Mhm.
feeling was just like, wow, this is cool, because it was something like I had kind of wanted to do, but
Mhm.
for that to happen, so like, that's why I was interested in what you fully producing and putting something together to see that go through those channels was like, and it's good to hear
Mhm.
that you still get that feeling. Like in the wrestling world, we always say like, if you're not getting butterflies before your match, no matter what level you are, then why are you still doing this?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Now, one of the things that's like I said, I'm excited to do this because I feel like you're like one of the most best kept secrets, and we need to put that out there. Um, but what was it like? You being from Baltimore. What was it like being interviewed on the local TV stations?
Um, it felt like a rites of passage. It felt
Mhm.
like, okay, this is what makes me above, yeah, I made it to a certain place above the local circuit to be rites of passage, really like, okay, hey, I deserve this space. I did something that was deserving of this attention. And so um most of the time I'm doing something when I'm being interviewed locally. If I'm on TV for it, it's because we're doing something that is not just newsworthy, but it's something that shines a light on music as well as the purpose of whatever we're doing. So, for example, when we were on the local news station for a song that I produced, and it was going for uh, what was it? Oh, for people that were human trafficking. That's what it was for, and
Mhm.
the proceeds were going towards a nonprofit. And so, as the song sold, we didn't see any money for it. So it was bringing attention to an issue, and we were raising revenue for the nonprofits that dealt with it every single day. That was something that was newsworthy, and it still pointed to music. It still pointed to the cause, and so it just so happens that I was involved in it to be the one to be on TV.
Mhm.
There are other times when another time we were doing a show for the kids, and we were on the news for it because we were making it entertaining for, when I say kids, I'm talking like toddlers. Like we're talking,
Yeah.
you know, kindergarten through maybe third grade at the most. And we were doing music like from movie soundtracks. Like we did Moana, we did the Wiz, like doing things like that, and doing it for both. Like some of those shows were for toddlers, and then some of those shows were for adults. But it's not commonplace to cover a whole movie soundtrack and putting twist on it for an adults to just come and enjoy the songs. It's not something that's common. So that's something that was newsworthy. Even when we were overseas and being on the news, it's because, hey, these Americans came over and they are teaching music and teaching life skills and stuff during the day and doing concerts at night. That was newsworthy. We even across seas, it was newsworthy. So it's making sure that you're having impact enough to make it newsworthy, and that's the name of the game, really.
Man, that's that might be the name of the episode. Make an impact through music. Um, Now, one of the things I think is really cool, and you're very quiet about, but it's on your bio, so we got to talk
Okay.
about this. Is that you are a member of the Recording Academy,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
aka
yeah.
the Grammys? And you're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. um, what was that like? That's a prestige honor, first off. But like, how did that come about? And how did that make you feel? Because that separates you from different, like, there's levels to this. So, you know, how did
Yeah.
that come about?
So back when I first became a member, it
Mhm.
was it was a process where you have to have a certain amount of records that were being distributed worldwide. It had to be like kind of current. You had to be active in it.
Okay.
Um, and they would basically look at what you were doing and say, okay, yeah, you can be in, or nah, that doesn't qualify because it's not here, here, and here. Your music isn't in these places. Um,
Mhm.
so once they said, "Oh yeah, you're in," I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing this right. Yes. All right, cool." Um, and then when I got in, it was, "Oh, this is way more than what I thought it was." Like, so people see the award shows, and that's where they think it stops. And really, the award shows are just like a part of the recording. It's not even the main part of the Recording Academy. So there are parts where we go out and we meet with and talk to different people in Congress about some of the laws that are in place that might need to be changed because it's a disservice to musician world. So we
Mhm.
go and petition to them and say, "Hey, listen, we need to change this law or change, this, and this is why." And doing that's part. They are their wings where we deal with just university students and mentoring and teaching them. There are parts where we're a part of a nonprofit, and in case like musicians, say for instance, a musician is down on his luck and gets sick and he can't play guitar anymore for the next 6 months. Like there are things in place where it's like, okay, well, we can prove that he's that's how he made his living, and this is how we can subsidize it. It's like a lot of those different things. They have different wings and meetings, and rubbing elbows with everybody that's in your particular space and learning. And it's a lot that's involved, and it's a shame that most people only know about the award show part. But
Hmm.
even that, like being behind the scenes, there's a process to that. Like people don't I don't know how many people may or may not know there are different levels of voting for that. So like there's one section where any and everybody can submit their music. If you're a member, you can submit your music in for review and for consideration. And then the second, like, then we all vote, and then we find out who the nominees are, and then there's the award show. That's how it works. And there are rules that you have to follow to when you're submitting your music in for consideration, how you talk about it. It's rules all around that. So it's a lot. It is prestigious for to be around and amongst people that value music differently. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, just like you said, we know about the award show, but it's so
mhm.
much. So to kind of get that insight, I think is really cool. To hear about that. One question I have is, with all that you do,
Mhm.
you know, how do you still balance? And I guess to say, not that I'm obviously somebody who benefits from this, but why still church?
um so I am an advocate for gospel music for
Okay.
overall. So gospel music, because from what I've seen, all of the genres that I've gotten to know,
Hmm.
gospel music is the one genre that you have to know all of the other genres to play
Uh,
correctly.
hmm.
So if you're playing gospel, you're already playing blues, you're already playing a little bit of jazz, you're already playing some version of spiritual. You know, um, if you cross over and you're doing CCM stuff, you're already playing pop music. You know what I mean? So the in gospel, inside of gospel, you to be skillful in it, you need to know blues, you need to know spirituals, you need to know jazz, you need to know R&B, you need to know dance music, you need to know pop music, you need to know a little bit of country, you need to know a little bit of classical. To be a really seasoned gospel music player, you have to know all of those things. And that's why, especially here in Baltimore, you'll see Baltimore gospel musicians being picked up by major artists and touring, because we understand music on a different level, because we have to play all of those genres all the time. So a lot of times for us, if you're coming out of a church and you go and somebody says, "Oh, I need you to play," and this is literally people that I know that have done this. Oh, well, we need you to play for Eminem and Dre. Oh, okay, yeah, I got that. That's Pocket. Oh, day, I got that. Or
Hmm.
we need you to play for Lady Gaga. Oh, yeah, I got that. That's cool. Um, is musicians that I know personally that came out of church and still play every Sunday, and they do these other gigs, because that's is you have to know those other genres to play it. So every so often I'll jump back into the gospel circuit and play live like I'm doing now, um for several reasons. One is to keep my chops up a little bit, but two, um I know that in certain churches there's guidance that needs to happen on, so some people will call it professional church when you have all of the things. You got the in-ear monitors, you have the lights and the videos on the side, and it's a
Mhm.
production. On that level, your musicianship is way, way, way different. I've played at a couple of mega churches, and the musicianship is it's stressful because you have to be right, you got to be on point. But then you have some like backdrop churches where it's still more traditional and it's still room for a certain amount of professional growth. I like being in those positions because I like to see and hear music growing and helping people grow inside of the music. I don't have to um, preach and teach the Bible or Jesus or any type of. I don't have to preach any of that stuff to make the music do what it's supposed to do.
Mhm.
And I like seeing when a musician nobody's helping a particular musician is like, oh well, I've trained musicians all my life. So here, learn this, do that. All right, let's get better. Let's get better. Let's get better. Same thing with singers. Like nobody ever told me to I got to look at my breathing or how I pronounce the words helps, people understand. No, people don't some churches, well, a lot of churches, people don't teach that. And
Mhm.
so I'm a teacher at heart. So I like seeing the growth and see and I know you're it's like me preaching to the choir because you've heard it and you've seen it happen. But I like seeing the growth and getting everything to a certain point so that everybody that's involved can like, understand, and enjoy the music on a different level.
Mhm. Nah, it's cool. I tried to retire in 2020. In 2020, that was the plan. But every now and again, I'll get on the drums, and I can
Mhm,
tell you, it's always cool to play aside you because I can learn. I can learn a little bit.
mhm,
Just hearing progression,
mhm.
hearing the organ do things I've never heard it do before in my um 20 plus years of seeing that organ. Uh, and a lot of times it's like, oh man, I wish I had my snare and my drum set, but it's a story. But no, in all fairness, is really cool to see. And if y'all really want to see Maurice work, come to 2001 West North Avenue, and on Sunday morning, 11 o'clock. That's what you pop. Or tune in, especially to the live stream that I'm producing every Sunday morning, 11 o'clock.
Oh, man.
But before a couple more things before we get out of here.
Mhm.
Um, who do you have anybody on your wish list that you want to work with? Whether it's in the gospel genre, R&B, hip hop, or anything.
Not really.
Okay,
I'm a process guy, so
got you.
I like walking through the process no matter who it is.
Hmm.
So, there are people that I admire. There are people that I might wanna ask some questions, like, I would like to know Quincy Jones, his mental process for how
Mm,
he does what he does. Um, Timbaland, I would like to know his thought process. I mean, I've watched his master class and it gives you a little bit of insight. You are watching videos and stuff, but there's always something behind the curtain that, you don't know. And for people like that, I would want to know like what is your actual process, you know?
yeah. Nah, that's really cool. Especially like you said, just like picking people's brains.
Mhm.
And getting to know their process. What's been your thoughts about just seeing the way technology has evolved, and how
Mhm.
do you stay on top of it, stay with it? Because it's easy to get caught up with something you like, right? Like so, like when I started video editing, I was taught how to edit on Final Cut Pro. The
Mhm.
next semester, they switched to Adobe Premiere, and the industry changed. Um,
Yeah.
but then everybody, for people who use Final Cut Pro for years, was like, "Oh, I want to use this. I want to use this. I don't want to move." So, what's it been like to work with technology and watch it evolve over time?
Um, I'm someone that likes learning. So,
Mhm,
um, and I like to be able to speak knowledgeably about any of it. So those combinations, I'll learn it. Like for
mhm,
example, I'm a Logic Pro type of person.
Mhm.
That's the DAW that I like. Do I know how to use Fruity Loops? Yes. Do I know how to use Cubase? Yes. Do I know how to use Pro Tools? Yes. My preference is Logic. Can I I've taught producers how to produce in Pro Tools.
Okay.
And and it's not something that I just don't particularly like it.
Mhm.
But I like learning what those plugins are and how to use, how to use them and just across the board. Something new comes out. Oh, well, hey, what's that? How could I use it with what I already have? Oh, well, this is the new thing. Oh, okay. Why? Why did they update it? What are the changes? So I like learning all of that stuff. Um, and of course, you grow and you learn how to do things faster and more efficiently, and so I don't mind the new stuff and the updates. I just like to hear about it. As soon as somebody tells me, "Hey, did you hear about this?" No, where is it? Let me go look and
Mm.
and figure it out. I like that. So sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's unnecessary, sometimes it's necessary. Why'd y'all take so long doing this? You know what I mean? So it has its ups and downs.
Okay. Now you've worked on a lot of projects, in general between
Hmm.
running audio for, big music projects or big TV projects or video projects.
Hmm.
Um, what's been some of the most fulfilling things you've done?
Uh, let's see. Hmm, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I'm a
So
journalist.
recently, recently, again, going back to the learning, I've worked with. So let me backtrack. I've worked with several Grammy nominated, Grammy award winning people.
Hmm.
Recently, I worked with two people. One's Grammy nominated, one had multiple Grammys on the producer and engineering side. I learned a lot, you know,
Mm.
even just how to hear the music and hearing what the changes were that they were making, like very, very subtle changes, but how it made records pop a different way. Um, though that kind of environment it is very important to me, like to learn from people that are a little bit further down the path than I am. And on the live engineering side, working and with some of these boards like the SSLs and like some of these bigger boards that make the board that that we use, it makes things like the Midas and the Behringers kind of look like, oh, that's a nice little toy, you know. Like
Mhm.
I like those kind of experiences are important to me.
Oh,
And they're the ones that stand out the most.
okay. So I got to ask you this question.
Mhm,
When you look back over your career and everything
mhm.
you've done, when did Maurice Carroll break through the glass ceiling?
Ah, hmm. So I want to say right when I started the company, when we started our production company. I think I broke through because I did the production company and the record label at the same time.
Mhm.
And for me, that ceiling of I don't know what to do, I broke through because it forced me to understand what to do. And that used to be my ceiling. Like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. And that ceiling of asking questions and saying I don't know and going to find out. That was the ceiling for me. So breaking through that was one. And
Mhm.
two, setting goals and agendas and meeting them. Not a wish list, not a I hope I might be able to, but setting a goal. Um Traveling, living off of this full time, touring, um, being the behind the scenes guy that's making everything happen. All of those things were goals. All of those things were things that I actually hit. So those were my glass ceilings, and I just keep breaking through them. I'll set
Man,
a new
that's
one and then break through that one.
there you go. That's what it's all about. Um, You mentioned earlier you like being the guy behind, you know, the magic that makes everything happen.
Mhm, mhm.
You don't ever sometimes get the itch to be like, "Hey, y'all, look at me."
So recently, I have stepped into that. I've and a lot of my people have are like, it's about time because and no, you're supposed to be in front. Okay, fine, I'll be in front. Um, it's not something that I'm used to, stepping out and saying, "Okay, well, I'm the guy that produces this record. I'm the guy that's behind this one." And, like, stepping out front is not something that's comfortable for me. I'm
Mhm.
doing it because I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to
Okay.
say, what does it feel like to have the spotlight on me? What does it feel like for, like, in this very situation, what does it feel like to be the artist that's being interviewed instead of
Mhm.
being the guy that's teaching the artist how to be interviewed? What does that feel like? And um I'm learning it. I'm pushing through a lot of different things in my learning process with it, but I do understand why it's necessary for me to be in front of the camera now. So
Yeah. Well, Maurice, I definitely appreciate you taking the time out. I know you got a very busy schedule. I was happy we was able to get to do this and be able to show off, to the world everything that you do. I know it's a lot of people, not just musicians, but people in general who will be
mhm,
inspired by this conversation. Especially, you're talking about, you had to make a choice and essentially not giving up, just doing a
mhm,
redirection. Let the people
mhm.
know where they can find you.
Cool. Yeah, social media, on Instagram, it's Maurice L. Carroll. On Facebook, same thing. On YouTube, the same thing. And anyway on social media, if you just put in my government, you'll see the icon pop up. Um, and I'm mostly active on Instagram and my website, mauricecarroll.net. And those are the places that you'll find me.
Appreciate you, man. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure y'all follow Maurice. And remember, do not let anyone place a ceiling above your success. Happy holidays, everyone.
What up? It's your boy Blue Magic, owner of For Your Wear and one half of the Mixed Tag Show. Now, I know you've seen the announcements from some of your favorite podcasters and wrestlers. I decided to expand my business to become a vendor so that people from the wrestling community have a better way to communicate with some of their favorites. So check out foryourwear.com and see if your favorite podcaster or wrestler has partnered up with me. If not, let them know that they should. Also, if you're looking for a vendor for your merchandise, reach out to me at Blue Magic Grind, spell how it sound on Twitter or Instagram, or at For Your Wear, FORURWEAR, on Twitter and on Instagram. Shout out to Brian H. Waters and Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Their merchandise are already up, and they're one of the first one that's supported, so go support them. All right? Peace.